She had already read 3 sentences before she understood what it was. She had picked it up because it was on the floor, fallen from the desk, or left there, the edge of it visible under the wastepaper basket in a way that suggested it had been set down and then reconsidered, and then abandoned. She picked things up. That was the job. She smoothed it flat against the desk without reading it, the way you do when you are respecting a boundary, and then the first line caught her eye the way first lines do when they are written by someone who meant every word. By the time you read this, you will be old enough to understand why I wasn't there. She read the second line. She read the third. She was still reading when the office door opened. He was supposed to be in Singapore. She knew his schedule the way she knew everything about this building, floor by floor, room by room, the particular geography of other people's lives. Marcus Hale was supposed to be in Singapore until Thursday. It was Tuesday. He was standing in the doorway of his own office in a travel-creased suit staring at her holding his letter, and the expression on his face was the kind that arrives before a person has had time to arrange it into something presentable. Raw. That was the word. He looked raw, the way something looks when the outer layer has been removed and what's underneath hasn't hardened yet. "Put it down," he said. She put it down. She stepped back from the desk. Her cleaning cart was in the hall. "I'm sorry," she said. "It was on the floor. I was going to, how much did you read?" She could have lied. She was not a person who lied easily, which had been a liability more than once in her life, and which she had stopped trying to correct. 3 sentences, she said. Maybe 4. He crossed the room. He picked up the letter. He looked at it, not at her, for a long moment. His jaw was set in the way of a man holding something in that has been held in too long already. "I won't say anything," she said. "Whatever it is, I won't say a word." He looked up at her then. Really looked, the way people rarely look at cleaning staff, like she was a person in the room and not furniture with a purpose. She met his eyes and didn't look away because she had nothing to be ashamed of, and she had learned that looking away costs you more than it protects you. "What's your name?" he said. "Alma," she said. "Alma Reyes." He nodded slowly. Something in his face shifted, not quite resolved, but different, like a man deciding something he hadn't planned to decide today. "Sit down, Alma Reyes," he said. "Please, if you have ever walked into a room intending to clean it and walked out carrying something you didn't expect, stay with us. Because what Marcus Hale tells Alma in the next hour, and what Alma does with it, and what neither of them sees coming across the months that follow, is a story about the things we hide from the people who matter most and the strangers we accidentally tell the truth to. Subscribe right now. This one will stay with you." Alma Reyes was 41 and had been cleaning the 14th and 15th floors of the Hale building for 3 years. She had taken the job the month after her divorce was finalized, the month she understood that the version of her life she'd been living was no longer structurally sound and needed to be rebuilt from scratch. She was a methodical rebuilder. She had come to this country at 22 with her mother's blessing and a cousin's address, which meant she had done this before and knew how. She worked nights, 4 buildings, studying for the real estate license she was going to hold by the end of the year. She had a timeline. She was going to be fine. Marcus Hale she knew only as a schedule and a set of preferences. The blinds at a specific angle, his own coffee cup in the sink, and a $50 bill once left on the desk with a note that said sorry about the week. It was a bad one, addressed to no one in particular, which she had found unexpectedly affecting. She had thought of him as a decent man in a large office, not as a man with an unfinished letter on his floor. She sat in the chair he'd indicated, the one across from the desk, the visitor's chair, not the sofa. Because the visitor's chair said this is a conversation and the sofa said something more complicated. He remained standing, the letter in his hand, looking out the window at the city 15 floors below. "I have a daughter," he said. "She's 12. Her name is Claire." Alma waited. "She lives with her mother in Vancouver. She has lived in Vancouver for 9 years. When she was 3, her mother and I..." He stopped. He set the letter on the desk, face down. "The version I told myself for a long time was that the distance made things simpler, that I was providing financially, which was true, and that Claire was young enough that my absence wouldn't register, which was the thing I told myself, because the alternative was understanding what I was actually doing." "What were you actually doing?" Alma said. He looked at her. The question had come out before she decided to ask it, which she noticed, and which he apparently noticed too, because something in his expression changed, not offended. The opposite. "Hiding," he said. "From the fact that I had no idea how to be her father. That every time I thought about flying to Vancouver, I found a reason not to, and the reasons got more elaborate as the years got longer, and by the time she was 7, I had convinced myself she'd be better off without the interruption of me." He looked at the letter. "She's 12 now. She sent me a school project last month, a family tree." He paused. "She left my branch mostly blank. She drew a dotted line to my name." The room was quiet. "The letter," Alma said, "is something I've been writing for 4 months. Different versions. I can't finish any of them." He sat down finally behind the desk with the heavy economy of a man whose body is tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. "I keep getting to the part where I'm supposed to explain, and every explanation sounds like an excuse, because it is." "Maybe it doesn't need an explanation," Alma said. He looked at her. "Maybe she doesn't need to know why," Alma said. "Maybe she needs to know what happens next." He was quiet for a long time. "You read 3 sentences," he said. 4, she said. But I understood the shape of it. He looked at the letter face down on the desk. He looked at her. "You should finish your shift, Alma Reyes. I've kept you long enough." She stood. She pushed her cart down the hall and finished the floor, and took the elevator down, and walked to the bus stop, and sat on the bench, and thought about a 12-year-old's family tree with a dotted line to a man who was currently sitting 15 floors up trying to find the words. She thought about her own daughter, Sophia, 17, who had been 14 when the divorce happened, and had worn the careful, protective look of a child who has decided to be the strong one, a role Alma had spent 3 years gently relieving her of. She understood what it cost a child to leave a branch blank. She left a note on the desk the following Tuesday. She had thought about it all week and talked herself out of it twice, and then written it on a square of paper from her notebook and left it under his coffee cup. It said, "Start with what you want her to know, not with what you did. She already knows what you did." She drew the dotted line. She expected nothing. She had said her piece. He was waiting by the elevator on Thursday, not in a way that was contrived. He was clearly finishing a call, phone to his ear, coat over his arm, and he saw her come off the service elevator and said something brief into the phone, and ended the call. He held up the square of paper. "Did it help?" she said. "I sent her a voice message," he said. "Yesterday, 7 minutes." He looked at the paper. "I said everything I was going to write. It was easier than I expected and harder than I can describe." He paused. She sent back a 3-second voice message. She said, "Okay, Dad, let's try." Alma looked at him. He was holding it together in the particular way of a person who has spent a day not being certain they would. "That's everything," Alma said. "Yes," he said, "it is." He looked at her for a moment. "Why did you help?" "You didn't know me. You didn't have to say anything." I have a daughter, Almo said. I know what the other side of a dotted line feels like. He was quiet. How old? 17. She's going to study architecture. She's going to be extraordinary. He smiled. It was the first time she'd seen it. It changed his face entirely. Not younger, exactly, but lighter, as though something that had been sitting on it had been briefly set down. I don't know your schedule, he said. But if you're ever on this floor on a night when I'm here, you can tell me how she's doing. With the architecture. She considered him. I'm here Tuesdays and Thursdays, she said. Then I'll be in the office Tuesdays and Thursdays, he said. He said it simply, the way a person states a logistical fact, with no performance of what it meant. She appreciated that. She had enough performance in her immediate past to last a lifetime. Tuesdays and Thursdays became the shape of something she didn't name for a long time. She was 41 and in the middle of rebuilding a life, and naming it felt premature. She brought coffee. He preferred it without sugar, and the building's kitchen was not locked to cleaning staff. He was always there when she came in, always just between things in a way that suggested the between things was the point. He asked about Sophia's architecture program applications. She told him. He asked real questions about the schools, the portfolios, the process, with the specific interest of someone who had actually looked into it, which she discovered when she mentioned a school in the Northwest, and he said, the sustainable design emphasis there is exceptional. Their thesis projects from last year were published in 3 journals. She looked at him. He looked slightly caught. I may have done some reading, he said. She laughed. It surprised her, the full, unguarded kind. He told her about Claire in pieces. A phone call that had gone badly and then better. A visit arranged for spring, Vancouver, a whole week, his first in 9 years, that he was terrified about in the specific way of a man who has learned that wanting to do the right thing and knowing how to do it are different skills. She told him about the divorce, the rebuilding, the real estate license she was 4 months from holding. He listened the way she had watched him listen to his 7-minute message, with the whole of his attention, nothing held back for something else. She passed the license exam on a Thursday morning in March. She called Sophia first. Sophia screamed for 10 seconds and said, I knew. I always knew. Then Almo stood in the car park and thought about who else she wanted to tell. The answer was not complicated. She texted him, passed. He called back in 40 seconds. Almo Reyes, he said. Marcus Hale, she said. I would like to take you to dinner, he said. Not in the building. Somewhere with a menu and a reservation and a table that I have to book in advance, because this is something that deserves to be marked properly. She looked at the car park around her, her testing folder under her arm. The license that meant the next version of her life was now structurally possible. All right, she said. The dinner was a Tuesday, but not a building Tuesday, a restaurant across town, linen tablecloths. He was already there when she arrived, which she noted. He stood when she came in, which she also noted. He was wearing a jacket that was not a work jacket. Neither was she. They talked for 3.5 hours. Not about the building. About architecture and a book they had both read, and a country she had visited at 22 that he had visited at 30, and which had changed both of them in similar ways. They talked the way 2 people talk when they have been building toward a conversation for a long time and are finally in it. Walking out, he said. Claire's visit is in 3 weeks. I know. You've been terrified for 2 months. I'm still terrified. It should feel like something, she said. If it felt like nothing, you'd be doing it wrong. He stopped on the pavement. He looked at her with the open, outer layer down expression she had come to know across 4 months of Tuesdays and Thursdays. "I'd like you to meet her," he said. "Not on this visit. Eventually, if that's something you—" "Yes," she said. Before she finished the calculation, which felt entirely correct. The Vancouver visit lasted 6 days, and he called her from it twice. Once, when it was going badly, Claire had gone silent at dinner, in the way of a 12-year-old who has decided silence is safer than words. Alma said, "Ask her to show you something, not talk." Show. Kids that age come back through their hands before their mouths. He took Claire to a bookshop. Graphic novels, 40 minutes, a book pressed into his hands. He texted Alma a photo, Claire mid-sentence at a shelf, his hand at the frame's edge. The caption said, "You were right. You are frequently right. I'm noting this." She had mentioned him to Sophia. "Someone I've been talking to. Someone I met at work." And Sophia had looked at her with the alert assessment of a 17-year-old who misses nothing and said, "Is he good to you?" Alma had thought about the $50 note, the Tuesday calls, the 7 minutes of courage and the 3 seconds it had earned him. "Yes," she had said. "He's good to me." "Then I want to meet him," Sophia said. They met in April. Sophia, Alma's mother, Marcus at the same table. He brought Alma's mother her favorite flowers, which he'd established by asking 2 weeks prior. Her mother looked at Alma across the table with a look that requires no translation. Sophia interrogated him for 40 minutes about sustainable architecture programs. He had done the reading. At the end, Sophia said to Alma, privately, in Spanish, "This one is serious. Keep him." She intended to. He told her he loved her on a Tuesday, which was right, the day that had held everything from the beginning. From a letter on a floor to a note under a coffee cup to a photograph of a child mid-sentence reaching back across 9 blank years. He said it plainly, directly, with no hedging. She said it back the same way. And in the lobby below the 14th floor of the building where they had started, his letter, her cart. 4 words she hadn't meant to read. Claire stood between them the following summer, taller than she'd expected, with her father's stillness and her own entirely distinct sense of direction, and she looked at Alma with the measuring assessment of a 13-year-old deciding what category a person belongs in. Then she said, "Dad says you told him to take me to the bookshop. He needed a push," Alma said. Claire considered this. "He needs a lot of pushes," she said. "It's good that you're here." She said it with the frank, practical certainty of a child who has decided something and is not planning to revisit it. Alma looked at Marcus. He was looking back at her with the open, outer layer-down expression she had first seen standing in a travel, creased suit in a doorway on a Tuesday night, raw and unguarded, and more honest than he'd intended. She had walked into that office to clean it. She had walked out carrying something she hadn't planned on. A square of paper, a dotted line, a man brave enough to send 7 minutes of truth into a phone and wait 3 seconds for the answer. Some floors we clean just to get to the next one. Some letters on the floor are meant to be found. Some dotted lines, if you follow them all the way to the end, lead somewhere no one drew on the map. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needed permission to send a 7-minute message. And subscribe. Because every week we are here, and we are just getting started.